Roots and relics. Genealogy-inspired relic hunting. What does that mean? Well, I've been a genealogist for almost 18 years now. My freshman year at East Carolina University, I took a class called Marriage and Family Relations, and I had to do a genealogy project in that class, and it got me hooked on genealogy ever since. The summer after my freshman year of college, I went back home and I did nothing but genealogy research that entire summer. When I decided to make a YouTube channel for metal detecting, I wanted to come from it from a historical perspective and really try to mix in genealogy whenever I could. This right here is what my family affectionately refers to as my wall of dead people. These right here are really my true treasures. I mean, every single time I can put a face to a name of one of my ancestors, that is absolutely priceless to me. What's up with all this talk about genealogy today? Well, that brings me to today's video. A few weeks ago, I was on the Nugget Noggin Facebook page, and a lady named Amanda Johnson posted a really interesting find that she made. She found a Purple Heart from a World War II soldier named Edward F Deary Jr. Basically what she was doing, she was asking Nugget Noggin, you know, what's the best way to research and find the family of this person? In her message, she said, "Hey Nugget, check out our find from today at an old schoolhouse site on our family's property. My dad and I found a Purple Heart medal. The poor guy lost his life in World War II at the age of 19, we think. We have no idea how it ended up here unless one of his distant relatives took it to school with them back in the 40s and lost it. We are trying to find his family so we can give it to them. Any suggestion on fast-tracking the search for this family? This is a first for us. Thanks." This interested me right away. I wanted to try to help do my part, put my genealogy skills to the test, and see if I could help track down a close relative of Edward Deary's. So I messaged her, "Did you have any luck finding his family? I may be able to help. I do genealogy work." There's a really popular website called FindAGravecom, and so I was able to pretty quickly pull up a grave of a World War II soldier named Edward F Deary. The cemetery that he's buried at is St. Mary's Cemetery in Salem, Essex County, Massachusetts. Right here is a picture of his gravestone, Edward F Deary Jr., Massachusetts, Private 26th Infantry, 1st Infantry Division, World War II. He's born January 9th, 1925, and died October 29th, 1944. So my first message to Amanda was, "Where did you find this? I know that Edward was from and is buried in Salem, Massachusetts." And Amanda said, "Jonathan Medford, we found it, metal detecting on a farm here in Cumberland County, Tennessee." Wow. Obviously, Edward is from Massachusetts. He was buried in Massachusetts. So how did this Purple Heart wind up on a farm in Cumberland County, Tennessee? So I responded to Amanda, "Wow, I will do some more genealogical digging and let you know what I find." I was able to find Edward's senior year yearbook from 1942 from Salem High School in Salem, Massachusetts. The yearbook is kind of fun. It lists nicknames. So Edward's nickname is obviously Junior because he's the son of Edward Deary, which we already know. He was listed as a junior in the Purple Heart. His chief companion, the Olds. Favorite saying, "Hey, hey, take it away." Hang out wherever he hangs his hat. And his ambition is fair Harvard. Now, Salem, Massachusetts is not very far from Cambridge, Massachusetts, where Harvard is. So I was really curious, his ambition is to go to Harvard. Did he actually fulfill that? I found one clue to kind of help us answer that. Here is an Army enlistment record from 1938 to 1946. So we had Edward F Deary Jr., 1925, native of Massachusetts, County Essex. He enlisted in the city of Boston, Massachusetts on 17th of November, 1943. Under education status, it's listed as 1 year of college. That's a little bit of a clue that maybe he did get to Harvard. I found out that on the campus of Harvard University, there's a monument dedicated to those alumni who died in World War II. Edward F. Deary Jr. is listed under the class of 1946. The next record I was able to find about Edward was actually an application for a military headstone. This application was applied for by his mother, Madge B. Deary, on April 2nd, 1950. And it was verified on January 19, 1953, and ordered on July 21st, 1953. This next document is U.S. rosters of World War II dead, 1939 to 1945. Right here at the top is Deary Edward F. Jr., private. There are no other Edward F. Deary Jr.'s listed on here. So we know that that Purple Heart belongs to the one and only Edward F. Deary Jr., who died in World War II. The next thing I was interested in doing was piecing together what Edward's life was like, and also finding out if he has any relatives that may still be living. When I look at the 1940 U.S. Census, it's kind of sad. Edward F. Jr. is the only male in the household. Apparently his father had already passed away. He was 15 years old in 1940. His mom, Madge, was 44 years old, and she's listed as widowed. And the only other person living in the household is a hired maid who's from Ireland. The curious thing, when I looked at this page, there were several houses that had hired maids who were all born in Ireland. Kind of interesting. Now, when I look at the 1930 census, his father's living. His father was 45 years old in the 1930 census, and his mom was listed as being 34 years old, and Edward was just 5. Also living in the household was someone named Anne, who was a cook, and she was born in Ireland, and also someone named Mary, who was listed as a nurse, as a practical nurse in the household. Another interesting part of the 1930 census was Edward's dad, Edward Sr., was listed as a manufacturer, and he actually owned a leather factory. When I took a look at the 1920 census, Edward Sr. was 31 years old, and he was actually living with his mother, Catherine, who was 70 and widowed at the time. And his mother is listed as being born in Ireland. When you look at the occupation for him, he was in the leather business at a leather factory. So he had always worked in this factory, apparently. So I decided to do some digging on leather factories in Salem, Massachusetts to see what I could find. What I found was pretty interesting. There was a Deary Brothers leather manufacturer in Salem, Massachusetts. One of my favorite tips for genealogy is you don't have to have a subscription to Ancestry.com to find some really cool stuff. Google Books is a treasure trove of genealogical data. Here's an entry in a Google book that I found. To enlarge factory, Deary Brothers, manufacturers of shoe stock, have plans for an addition. 50 by 100 feet, 3 stories high, to their factory at Goodhue Street, Salem, which they recently purchased from the American Hide and Leather Company. Their leather factory was known for making Goodyear welts, which look like this. Amanda Johnson, who found this Purple Heart, was really wanting to return the Purple Heart to the family of Edward Deary. But one thing I found was Edward was an only child. So the thought of finding a relative who is really closely related to him was starting to wane on me. I knew I wasn't going to be able to find an uncle or a first cousin or anything like that. So what I needed to do was find Edward Sr.'s family and see if maybe he had a brother or sister and follow that branch down the line. So Edward Sr. was the son of John Deary and Catherine Brogren. One neat little thing here I was able to find was a World War I draft registration card for Edward Francis Deary Sr. He lived at 81 Tremont Street in Salem, Massachusetts. His date of birth was April 9th, 1887. His present occupation was leather manufacturing. Place that he was employed was the Deary Brothers. He listed that he is responsible for the care of his mother. Do you claim exemptions from the draft? Business reasons to support mother is what he listed there. He's listed as being tall, of medium build, blue eyes, light hair color, and has the person lost arms, leg, hand, foot, or both, or eyes, or otherwise disabled? Specify. And he has a very serious condition known as varicose veins. This is a picture of what 81 Tremont Street looks like. I don't know for sure if this is the exact same house, but judging by the looks of it, I think it might be. Here's a look at the tombstone of the Dearys. So they're all buried together. Edward F. Deary, born in 1887, died in 1936. Madge, born 1896, died in 1957. And then Edward F. Deary Jr. died in 1944. So Edward Sr.'s father is John H. Deary, who was born November 1845 in Ireland. John Deary and Catherine Brogren had 6 children. So I had 6 different possibilities of people to be able to find a close relative so that Amanda could return this Purple Heart to the family. Edward F. Deary Sr. had 1 brother and 4 sisters. Since the Purple Heart had the name Deary on it, I thought it'd be kind of cool to see if we could find a relative whose last name is Deary and make contact with them. So I decided to focus on Edward's brother, John Andrew, to see if we could find a close relative. So John Andrew was born 20th January 1886 in Salem, Massachusetts. He married a lady named Elizabeth Fury, and they had 3 girls and 1 boy. The 1 boy's name was, of course, John Andrew Deary Jr. They lived at 33 Loring Avenue. What a beautiful house that was and still is. So John Andrew Deary Jr. married a lady named Joanella. I'm hiding the last names of the women involved here for security purposes for the people that are still living. So John Andrew Deary Jr. died pretty recently in 2005, and he had 5 children: John Andrew Deary III, Tristram Deary, Eliza Deary, Sean Deary, and Shauna Deary. With all of this information in hand, it was time to give an update to Amanda on the situation. I told Amanda, okay, so unfortunately, Edward Francis Deary Jr. was the only child of Edward F. Deary and Madge Bernadette Collins. His father passed away when he was only 11 years old, and his mom passed away in 1957. The closest family members would be his cousins through his father's brother, John Andrew Deary. Amanda wasted no time and got right on trying to contact the family. I've messaged 4 people whom I believe may be some of the cousins you've listed, including a copy of your post here, showing your work on finding potential family members, a picture, and then a link to my original posting on another Facebook page. Awesome, no prob, thanks, you made a great find. I spoke to Andrew Deary Friday night, who put me in touch with his cousin Charles Reardon, whom called me today regarding the Purple Heart. We have confirmed that they are the family of Edward F. Deary Jr., and I will be mailing the medal to Charles this week. He lives in Colorado and is the second cousin to Edward Deary. Every bit of the information you sent me was correct, and I will also be crediting you in this journey to find the family. Thank you, sir. Wow, that's pretty cool. We were actually able to connect the Purple Heart with the original family, which I think is pretty neat. The one thing that's still curious to me is, how did this medal end up in Tennessee? So I asked Amanda about that. That is so great. Did anyone in the family move to Tennessee, or do you think this was auctioned away? Perhaps someone from his unit was from your area and was given the medal. Amanda said, we are still unsure, but I will be including in the mail some description of the area in which it was found, so that when Mr. Reardon continues the search for answers, then maybe he can make that connection. So what do you think it is? How did that medal end up in Tennessee? I can see a couple of different scenarios. There must have been an auction when the family passed away. I mean, Edward Sr. was no longer living. Edward Jr. is not living. His mother passed away just a few years after he did, really. With all the stuff in the household and no one to inherit it, I have to imagine that a lot of the stuff just went up to auction, and maybe that Purple Heart made its way on the auction block and someone purchased it and it traveled somewhere and got sold at a store, or someone bought it and then some kid took it to school and left it on the schoolyard. Maybe that's a possibility. Another thing I think maybe there was a very special friend in his unit that was with him when he died, and perhaps his mother gave that Purple Heart to one of his dear friends from his unit, and maybe that friend was from Tennessee. And so maybe that's how it ended up being there. I think there's a lot of research to be done in that area. We know what unit of the Army that he was in, and I would like to take a look at the roster and see if there's anybody from that particular county in Tennessee where it was found. I hope you've enjoyed this video where I've kind of taken you through the process. If you're a metal detector and you
This is a metal detector. We are metal detectorists.
Found something that maybe has a name associated with it, or you're just kind of curious about a piece or a cemetery or a grave that you found, and you'd like some help researching the genealogical history behind a piece, I'd be more than happy to help you out with that. Thanks for watching.